Welcome to the 8-Minute Devotion with Pastor Cameron Walcott. The 8-Minute Devotion is a daily message that exists to give you hope, encouragement, and life as we look together at the Word of God. And now, the 8-Minute Devotion.
Yo, and welcome back to the 8-Minute Devotion. So glad that you're here with us as we look at Psalm 23 together. And today we're going to read Psalm 23 and verse 4. It says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." This passage, of course, is very comforting to many of us. It says, even when I'm walking through that valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear. I will fear no evil. Why? Because you, my good shepherd, the Lord, is with me. You know, there are always times when we go through experiences that are like, we feel like we're in the valley of the shadow of death. We've all been through times where we've been so close to the thing that frightens us, where we've been so close to fear, whether it's a financial problem, whether it's a health problem, whether it's a problem in your family, and you just feel like you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Some of you may have gone through severe health problems where you literally thought you may die. You literally thought that was going to happen, and you were walking through the valley of the shadow of death. I know I've talked to people who've been through these sorts of experiences, but in these times, we don't have to fear any evil. Why don't we need to fear? Because God is with us. You know, I want you to remember back when you were a child. I want you to remember when you were young, and how you could be going through something so scary. You could be going through, you could be facing something that in your little childhood mind was so fearful. Maybe it was walking home after dark. Maybe it was a dog, or, you know, one of these things. And you were so scared. But then when you were near your father or your mother, suddenly your fears would go away. I know that I was scared of dogs growing up. And the one thing that could assuage my fear, the one thing that could calm my fears was when my dad was around. You know, he's a big guy like I am today. And, you know, when he was there, suddenly the dogs didn't seem so scary because he was with me. And at that time, when I saw a loose dog, man, that was my valley of the shadow of death. I was so scared, but not when he was with me. And of course, now I have children. I have 3 kids, and my youngest, Anna, 5 years old. And there are many times something will scare her. You know, sometimes it's a small thing. It could just be a stranger, a person that she hasn't met before, and she becomes scared. It could be a loud noise, a storm. She becomes scared. Even when we're just in the dark, if we're outside and it's after dark, she gets scared. And you know what comforts her? You know what calms down her fears is just to be beside me and hold my hand. When she holds my hand, suddenly her fears are gone. Suddenly she realizes that Dad is with me. I don't need to be afraid. And you see, we have this assurance in our lives that He is with us, that when we walk through the darkest times, we are never alone. So we don't need to fear the evil. We don't need to fear what the enemy can do with us, because God is on our side. Remind yourself of that in every season in your life, in every situation in your life, you are never alone, but God is with you. Hebrews 13:5, I will never leave you nor forsake you. It is the promise of God. He is always there. He is always there in your life. He never leaves you. He never, ever forsakes you. We know what Jesus said in Matthew 28 when he was about to ascend to heaven. His last words to his disciples, he said, "Behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." He is always with those of us who follow him. You know, I think of times in my life where I walked through very scary things. First country I went to as a full-time missionary, we actually got kicked out of the country. I've shared the story in part before, and we were only given 1 week to leave, and we were told that we were going to be arrested if we were still there. We were in a country in South Asia, and they told us this: you will be arrested if you're still here in a week. And so we basically had to go. You know, that we prayed, the decision was made that we needed to leave. But I remember when we were leaving the country, we weren't sure if we were going to be allowed to leave, or if our passports would be taken, if they would imprison us. We did not know the exact situation. And I'll never forget as we were about to go through immigration. Again, you know, they told us one thing, but then somebody else said another thing. Nobody really knew what would happen. And there was such a sense of fear that this could be it. This could be bad. We could be imprisoned. We could be severely punished. But yet in that time, the Lord gave us peace, and the Lord reminded us, I am with you. The Lord reminded us that He is with us. He's the good shepherd. He's walking beside us. And although prior to walking up, and in some of the days before, moments before, we had this fear, but yet when it actually came time, there was no fear because we knew that He was with us. We knew that God was with us, and we didn't have to fear any evil, for He was with us. And so many times in my life I've experienced this. It's not to say that I never have experienced the fear. I have, but yet I have discovered that in the middle of fear, in the middle of this darkness, that I can trust God, and I don't have to give in to fear. I don't have to continue with the fear. I can rebuke the fear and move on, not because I'm strong, not because I'm brave, not because I'm courageous, but because God the Father is with me. So I want some of you to picture this in your own mind. You're going through these dark and scary times. Imagine yourself reaching up, and the Father is there, and He's a good shepherd, and He's there, and you're holding on to His hand. And suddenly these scary things aren't so scary anymore. Suddenly these difficult things aren't so scary, because you're holding on to the Good Shepherd's hand. You're holding on. He's leading you. He's guiding you. You don't need to fear anymore. You see, it says that His rod and His staff, they comfort us. And one thing that the shepherd would use His rod for was to beat off predators, was to beat off the lions, was to beat off the bears, was to beat off these predators. That's what the shepherd would use his staff for. And we have a God who has a rod. We have a God who has a staff. He will use that rod and staff to beat away those who are trying to destroy us. I'm not talking about the natural people, but the forces of evil, the demonic oppression. He will use His rod and His staff. He is with us. Romans 8:31, we looked at it a couple weeks ago. If God is for us, then who can be against us? And the answer is no one. His rod and His staff will beat off the enemy, will keep us safe, will keep us protected, because we have a good God on our side. Picture yourself reaching up. He's a good Father. At other times He may use that rod and staff to gently prod us, to gently poke us in the right direction. He might use it to correct us, not to destroy us, but to correct us and get us moving in the right direction. But that brings comfort, because we know He will not abandon us. He will not leave us to our own devices. He will guide us. He will lead us into those green pastures. He will guide us. He will lead us into safety. So friends, if you're walking through a valley, if you're walking through a shadow, if you're walking through a time where there's fear of death, fear no evil. God is with you today. God is with you right now, right where you are. Look to Him as your shepherd. Reach up and take His hand. Have no fear. As you walk through these valleys, He is with you, and He will be with you always. We'll be back tomorrow to finish Psalm 23, only on the 8-Minute Devotion.
Thank you for listening to the 8-Minute Devotion. We trust you've been encouraged and blessed today. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or by visiting the8minutedevotion.podbean.com. For questions or comments, please email us at the8minutedevotion@gmail.com or visit our Facebook page. We would love to hear from you.